What up, YouTube? You already know. Big Lou tapping back in. What it do with Big Lou and FZR2, baby, baby. First time you come to the channel. Highly appreciate it if you sub, liked, and share the channel with your family, friends, folks, peoples, gente, comrades, associates, camaradas, socios, buddies, pals, amigos, amicos, and panas. And as always, feel free to comment. I respond back to all the comments. Um, so this video is a quick video on Corcoran State Prison, CSP, right? Or California State Prison at Corcoran, the SHU, right, which stands for the Security Housing Unit. This dates back to the so let's break it down. Corcoran State Prison opened up in 1988. 1988, I believe, and Pelican Bay State Prison opened up in 89. Tehachapi had been open for many, many years, but I'm not really sure when they started using it for a SHU. Indeterminate SHU. So you have the three: Pelican Bay State Prison, Corcoran State Prison, and Tehachapi, what Tehachapi is called. Oh man, I forgot what Tehachapi is called. The real name of Tehachapi. Anyways, Tehachapi is in Kern County, and those are where they send inmates that have indeterminate SHUs, which means there is no date for them to come out of the SHU, right? Usually it's because they're either a program failure or they're either allegedly a gang member, prison gang member, or an associate. And originally there was four, the big four, what they call. Now really it's just the big three, right? You have the two Latino groups. You have the white group. I don't really like saying the names. And then you had a black group. That group is not really, how would I say that? They're not really, they're not predominant. Like they're not predominant, but they don't have a big influence like they used to have in the 70s. Let's put it that way. Up until the 80s, right? The Crips and Bloods end up getting real big, and they didn't want to take no type of orders from these guys. Anyways, then you have associates. So if you had anywhere from I believe I want to break it down as anything a 2-year SHU or under, you could do it at any prison. But anything over a 2-year SHU, it might be a 3-year SHU. I can't remember. It's either a 2-year SHU or a 3-year SHU. You would go to one of those three that I just named: Tehachapi, Pelican Bay, or Corcoran. So this particular store, okay, and before those opened up, they used to use New Folsom that was opened in 86. A facility, I believe it was a facility. They would use that as a SHU before Pelican Bay and Corcoran opened up. And like I said, Tehachapi's been open up for many years, but they just, over the years, they've changed the levels and they changed the housing that they house. So this particular video is about the Corcoran SHU, which they call the Gladiator days or Gladiator fights. And what that was this was in the early 90s. I want to believe it started sometime around 1990, and it went on until around, I think it was 95 or 96. And what happened there was that COs, correctional officers, were setting up fights with oppositions, so-called oppositions, right? So let's break it down. Blacks, Northern Hispanics, Northern Latinos one side, Southern Latinos and whites the other side. You know what I'm saying? And so if you put a Northern Latino with the Southern Latino, or 2 and 2, because sometimes you'd have cellies, then it would go down. If you put a Northern Latino out there with whites, it will go down. If you put a Southern Latino out there with blacks, it will go down. Southern Latinos with Northern Latinos, like I just mentioned, it would go down. And so what happened was these guys started setting up these fights, putting guys out there with known oppositions, knowing it's going to go down, and they would bet. They would bet on who they thought would win, and then this was for money. And then if sometimes during their escort to the yard or to the showers, maybe they would let them guys know, hey, I got my money on you. Don't disappoint me. You know what I'm saying? And what they would do is in return, they would give these guys extra uh, trays or extra lunches, right? And so from the stories I've heard, and also the story from one of my cousins, R.I.P. Payaso from East Oakland, passed away. He told me he went through that shoe in 1993, I believe it was 1993 or 1994. He got validated with the indeterminate SHU and went through Corcoran SHU. He was on the main line, he got validated on the main line there on Corcoran SHU, and then he was from there on he was in the SHU and never came out the SHU. Even after he was in bad standings with our peoples, he still decided to stay in the SHU instead of debriefing or anything like that to get back on the main line. Um, so from the stories I used to hear from him, and then what I've been hearing on other channels, you would fight, you would go out there, you would fight, and then you would go on like a CTQ for 10 days. CTQ stands for confined to quarters, right? And you would get a 115, a CDC 115, which is a write up, disciplinary write up, and then you would eventually see the lieutenant, and he would give you your disciplinary action. It might be loss of privileges, yard, maybe you don't get phones in there, so you don't, and it might be loss of packages, but you can't get a package in there until you're in there for a year. If you come from reception, if you come from mainline, and then you get validated on the line, and then you go to the SHU. I'm not sure how that works. If it's still a year, you got to wait. It might be, but the disciplinaries are loss of visits, loss of yard, loss of packages. That's all they got there. When you're on the main line, it could be loss of yard, loss of packages, loss of uh, phone privileges. It could be C status, where you're only allowed to go $55 a month store instead of $220. But in the whole, anyways, you only can go $55. At that time, when these so-called gladiator fights started, you could only go $35 a month, and then it was 70 in reception center and 140 on the main line at that time. Now it's $55 in the hole or the SHU, $110 in reception, and $220 on the main line. You can go to the store. So as you can see, it's a big dollar amount change since then. $80 on the main line, $40 on reception, and $20 in AdSeg, the hole or the SHU. And so basically, you would, like I said, they would put out guys of different group segments, put them out there in the yard together. A lot of the homeboys would make sure that they would get their back against the wall, opposition between them, where they can look. So I'm looking up right now. You guys see me looking up? I'm looking up at the tower. That way I know, already when he cocks the Mini 14, you hear it. You hear when he the Big Bertha, which is a block gun. When they hit that, right? They chamber it. You know that, but you place yourself where you see them, so you know when they're firing, and then the opposition is between you and their backs turned to the gunner, right, to the tower. Um, a lot of times you hear the stories, man. A lot of times the Northern Latinos were the ones taking the worst end of the stick, as far as the damage from the actual live rounds and the Big Bertha, the big block guns, as well as the blacks. Um, and it got so bad, So basically, what happens is you get your 115, which is a write up. You get CTQ, confined to quarters for 10 days, and then every 10 days you would come back out again and go through it all again. Like I said, blacks and Northern Latinos seemed like they were taking the worst end of the stick on this here deal, and so that's why they were your people within your people's. The strategy would be place yourself your back against the wall where you don't have to worry about nothing behind you, and then you can see the tower. You can see the tower like this, and then the guy you're fighting is in front of you. And so, uh, it got out of hand. It was corrupt, scandalous. But the thing was is that they were able to rely on policy in the Dom. That's a daily operational daily operational what do they call that? Daily operational manual, the DOM, and hold on. And so yeah, so they would rely on policy, what is said in the DOM, and that end up saving them. And then when some of these guys were charged. When they went to trial, the judge was more siding with them, um, and most of them got off. A lot of them were able to. Some of them were able to retire. Some went on to transfer and work for other prisons. I'm not sure if any of them actually went to prison on that, but some of them did go to prison. It might have been on some other charges. But a lot of guys were just plain out, killed. I mean, they were shot in the head, walking away from the fight after their opposition was on the floor because they got dropped or knocked out. Um, a lot of shots taken to the head, higher parts of their body when they could have just, diffused the situation by popping them in the leg or something like that. And it was just flat out murder, in my opinion. Well, I don't know if you want to call that unfortunately or unfortunately, I don't know, but a lot of guys it broke. A lot of guys were like, the hell with this. Why should we go out there and put ourselves in this predicament to get killed? Which I feel I totally get what they're saying, because I mean, at the end of the day, you're dead, you get shot, you're dead. What did that prove? You're out there getting busy with the opposition, and fortunately, guys were shot. Now there's a guy that's from my town that I grew up in. He's been down 30, I think, since 1985. So what would that be? 37 years. I remember the person that he went to jail for killing. She was a friend of my brother's. I remember seeing her daughter around town, with her grandma, because she was left with her grandma after her mother got killed. So I remember all that. But this guy's came on um, a platform and he spoke about it. And he got really messed up. He got jacked up from getting shot with the block gun, where like he walks different now. So like even though that thing's a block gun and it's not the actual Big Bertha, right? It's not the actual live rounds. It still does a lot of damage. And just imagine if you're getting hit with this, every month or every 2-3 months. Imagine what it does to you. I mean, I've seen chunks get taken. Guys getting popped with it. Chunks getting actually getting taken. Open. You know what I'm saying? I seen a guy one time. I was at my door. Somebody was on orientation and he jumped out of the when his cellie went to go eat. Actually, no, that's not what happened that time. This time it was two guys, new guys. They were on orientation. They had two signs on their door saying that their last name and their California Department of Correction number, and the sign said orientation. So that means they can't come out until they see classification, the committee, right? And so what happened was the tower made a mistake, and when everybody was coming back from chow, they popped their doors too, because you get cell fed when you're on orientation. So what happened was the tower popped their doors with everybody else when he was popping the other doors and let them in. These guys come out and decide to rush these couple of guys that are on the tier going to their cell, and one of the dudes got popped in their knee by the block gun. And when I seen their knee went behind their back and like slapped them in their back because it busted their kneecap. I seen that. I seen another guy. That one I watched through my cell door because I was down the way and I already had went in my cell from chow, and I took, I was already, me and my cellie were inside. Another time I heard, it was not heard, but I heard it, but it was on the other side of the building and I could see it through my window. The cat got shot in his nut, one of his nuts. And same scenario. He went in there to go lock it up. He had a cellie in there, and the cellie decided he didn't want to be there, and he took things in his hand and attacked the cellie. He was only there for about maybe an hour or two in the cell from the time he came from R&R, which is receiving and releasing. And him and the cellie start fighting, and like I said, the tower shot with the block gun and hit the dude in his nut, right in one of his nuts, and they had to remove it. It got too damaged. I'm not sure exactly the story how or what happened to the damage it did, but I knew that it was damaged enough where they had to remove it. And so, anyways, back to Corcoran. These guys were fighting, setting up these fights. It went on for a while until a couple of COs decided to blow the whistle, and they started recording things with their. I don't know if it was with a phone, because again, this was mid '90s, so they probably had phones, but I don't know if it was phones or cameras. But they started taking footage. They started documenting a lot of things, and then they forwarded it to. Um, I'm not sure if they started with the internal affairs there at the prison, um, or if they went straight to the feds. But I know eventually the feds, the FBI got involved, or the marshals, or I don't know exactly what entity agency it was, but it definitely was a federal agency. They got involved, and then eventually I think some of them COs were removed from the premises of Corcoran, and then some of them got charged, but ultimately they were acquitted because they were able to fall back on policy again. And so when policies put in motion, uh, a lot of times, they can always fall back on and say that, oh, we were just following the procedures and the policies, even though they were straight up setting up fights, just like back in the day with the Romans and the Greeks, in the Colosseums, and setting up fights to the death, and it basically was just like that, to the death. A lot of guys got shot, like I said, in the back of the head, in their back, walking away from the scene, from the situation, that the fight, right? And so, it's one of those things, unfortunate, but it is part of the history of the California Department of Corrections, and it's one of those ugly things. But like I said, a lot of guys tapped out because it got too hot in the kitchen. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, I totally get it. Why they would want to do something like that, and that's where also the relations between the blacks and the northern Latinos started changing, because at that point they had a strong alliance, dating back to the 70s, maybe even the late 60s. I'm trying to think when that group came out. I want to say it was, might have been late 60s, 67, 68, 69ish. So they had a very strong relationship with the so-called Northern Latino mob from that was established in the 60s. Majority of the founders were from Southern California, though. So at that time, you had a lot of guys from Northern California that were members or strong sympathizers with the Southern Latino mob, and vice versa. You had guys from San Diego, from East LA that were strong, either members or very, very strong sympathizers with the so-called Northern Latino mob. And so the Northern Latino mob had a strong ties with the brothers, the blacks, dating back to the late 60s, all the way up until the 80s. And then when this occurred, which was the 90s, a lot of the blacks were like, we're not going out there just to get killed. Again, I get what they're saying with that, but at the same time, the Northern Latinos were still going out there. Some of, and then part of, and the rules was, when the COs go by, you got to have your light on, your bright light, because you have two settings on your light. You got to have your bright light on if you want to go to yard. A lot of people would just have it off, and that meant fuck you, keep moving, keep pass my cell up, I'm not coming out. And there's a lot of Northern Latinos and Southern Latinos and whites that did it too. It's not just the blacks, but I'm just saying, I'm pinpointing to when the relations started to change between the Northern Latinos and the blacks, and this is around this time, uh, 90s, right? The 90s for sure. So these cops, like I said, these two COs uh, started documenting things they were seeing, things that were going on. Certain COs that were always in the mix, always doing the escorting. Like I said, they took footage, they documented things, and then at some point they turned it over to another entity. It might have been the Internal Affairs there, CDC, but eventually it made its way to the federal level. And for the most part, nobody really was charged. Um, and so, yeah, it goes down as part of the history of California Department of Corrections. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to drop it in the comments section and whatever it is. And if I don't know the answer, I will find out the answer. I got ties with people that were there when this was going down. So, um, it won't be an issue for me to find out if I don't know the answer. But yeah, that was Corcoran SHU for you. So the thumbnail I put, I believe it says 4A, the B section. So they used to have 4A, 4 left, 4A, let me see, 4A, 4 left, 4A, 4 right, 4, I'm trying to think. Those are the only ones I remember. I was in 4A, 4 right, excuse me, I was in 4A, 4 left a couple of times. Um, so they have, I think, four different ones: 4A, 4 left, 4A, 4 right, 4A, 4B, 4 something. I don't remember those other sections. But then you got the validated section, the non-validated section, and then the non-validated section you'll have cellies. The validated section, you used to have cellies until they changed that. Also in the mid '90s, late '90s, when guys wouldn't have cellies because a lot of times cellies would become they would fall in bad standings within their organization, and they would have the celly move on them because obviously the celly is the only one that can get to them because they're the only ones in the cell together. And then they stopped having cellies, and then what happened eventually was the group yards. They would all go out. You would go out to the yard with you and your celly, um, and then other places, there'd be a ton of guys out there, 20, 30 different guys, Northern Latinos, and then maybe 10, 15 brothers, blacks. And so that was called the Northern Latino black yard. And then you had the Southern Latino white yard. And so you had a lot of guys out there, and things would kick off. Guys would get removed, three guys on one with the weapon, two with no weapon, or they would just beat the crap out of them. And eventually they stopped at two, where it was just dog kennels. And only you would go in the cage, unless you had a celly. Then you and your celly would go in there together. A lot of institutions, their ADSEG, which is the whole, it'll be also called the oil, the back. They're designed to only house one person. So that obviously, if that's the case, you live with only yourself. When you go to yard, you're just going there by yourself. You know what I mean? And that's the dog kennels. And I mean, it's literally a dog kennel. Your dog, what you put your dog in your yard, if you have a kennel out there, the only difference is you got a toilet and a sink that's hooked up one unit. When the water goes down the drain from the sink, it goes right into the toilet. No exercise bars, but guys would make things out of their towels, to curl, with their towels. Sometimes guys would make a long bar like this for pull-ups and chin-ups. Um, and you take your towel out there to put it down on the floor to do your push-ups off of, right? So I used to do that, push-ups, and then I used to hit back arms off the sink and off the toilet. And then the reverse dips off the toilet as well. And then curls off the cage, off the side of the fence. And, you do whatever you can do to get to work different, muscles. You know what I mean? It's like I always say, we're humans adapt. We're creatures of habit. We adapt to any surroundings. We make it work, right? You got to do what you got to do. So it's that kind of that fight or flight mode, or that sink or swim mode. That's what happens. You know what I'm saying? If you're a guy that likes to work out, like most people are in prison, um, then you make it happen, Captain. You know what I'm saying? And it is what it is. It's kind of like this too. We used to say, "I'm not new to this. I'm true to this," meaning, you just didn't start doing this. You've been doing it for a while, so therefore you know what you're doing. You don't treat yourself. You don't cheat yourself. You treat yourself. So why cheat on some workout when if you do it right, you're gaining the benefit of doing it right. So again, why cheat yourself when you can treat yourself? I'm not new to this. I'm true to this. I'm in like Flynn. You feel me? It's all good in Hollywood. Uh, and so you start learning some of the slang, and your swag starts changing after, like I said, you're not new to this. You're true to this. So therefore, you start picking up things from other cats. You start picking up things on your own. Just like with any job, the longer you're with that job, you start picking up shortcuts that really work, though. Not so much. What I mean by shortcuts, not like Mickey Mouse in it, where you're rigging something or you're doing something half-assed, but you learn how to do stuff quicker, and it might be more efficient for the time that you're using. So same thing with that, with working out. Same thing with living in the system. You figure out ways to make money. You figure out ways to get what you need. You figure out ways how to manipulate the system if need be. and all that. You know what I'm saying? And it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? So that's just a little video about the Corcoran Gladiator days, setting up the fights, and a little bit about the background on what transpired up until that point when those COs blew the whistle. And again, if you guys got any comments about anything or questions, shoot them, and I'll do my best to answer them. And like I said, if I don't know them, then I'll find out the answer. You know, I got ties with folks that were around during that time. I'm not old enough, so you know, I'm only 44, so you know, if you go back to when I was 18, then that's 26 years ago. That would be 1996. I came through the system a little bit after that, you know, still in the 90s, but a little bit after that. And by the time I hit that institution was 98, so it was almost a decade later. Things had way changed since then, and you know, they were on top of things of all the shenanigans and all the bullshit. You feel me? So it is what it is. With that being said, though, Big Lou's gonna tap on out, and I appreciate everybody that comes back on over after this video is uploaded and watch it. And I appreciate each and every one of you subscribers. And have a blessed remainder of your day. Big Lou tapping out.